here in the book of Esther, I'm not going to have you turn to your Bibles because we'd have to read all 10 chapters and that would take the entire time. I want to just share with you this story. And so I want you to be able to just sit back, relax, and enjoy as hopefully you'll see God's word come to life and experience for yourself that God indeed is in control. Our story begins with chapter 1. And oddly enough, this actually fits with a lot of what you might know in history. Chapter 1 begins in the 3rd year of King Ahasuerus. Ahasuerus is also known as King Xerxes, and his reign. And he decides to have a feast for all of his officials and servants. Here's a big question. Why, even to this day, do leaders have big feasts for all their officials? It's to raise money. He was having a fundraiser. Why? He wanted to go to war against Greece. So he was trying to gin up all of his official support, all of his military support, so that he could begin to make his conquest and expand the Persian kingdom all the way into the middle of Europe. So he needed a little dough in order to be able to make all those ships and all of those soldiers go that far. So he was preparing for his upcoming conquest. Now, he decided to have not just a day party, but multiple days filled with eating and drinking and all kinds of festivities that were going on. And while he was partying for all of his royal officials, the Queen Vashti, was also having a celebration for her attendants and all the women in the citadel. So the women were having a feast with Queen Vashti. The men were having a feast all together with King Xerxes, with Ahasuerus. And on the 7th day of eating each day and of drinking each day, Xerxes gets a little drunk. And one of the things that he decides to do is he wants to show off his queen. He wants to show off how beautiful she is. Make sure that every man there sees how envious he has it. So he sends his servants, his eunuchs, to go out and ask Queen Vashti to come in and show off her beauty. But women, how many of you would like your husband who is drunk to call you into a room to show how beautiful you are to a whole bunch of men? Does that sound like a fun idea to you? No, especially because they're all drunk too. So this is not a good idea. This is bad, and Queen Vashti knows it. So when he goes in order to try to ask Vashti to come, Vashti obviously says, absolutely not. I am not going to do this. I am not going out to display myself to a whole bunch of drunkards. This will turn out bad. So she says no, which was unheard of. A wife, a Persian queen, denying her husband's request. Well, the eunuch goes back to Xerxes and says, Vashti says no, and Xerxes gets mad and says, what? And so he actually does the worst thing he possibly could do by saying, hey, according to the law, for her disobeying me, her husband, what should be done to Queen Vashti? So what are my options? Well, some of them, yes, maybe, but not so harsh. Some of the officials decided that this was a big problem. And it wasn't just a problem because Queen Vashti said no to King Xerxes, right? This was a big problem because not only has Queen Vashti done wrong against Ahasuerus, but she has done wrong against everybody. Why? Because if people find out that the queen disobeyed the king, then all the women are going to disobey their husbands. Really? This problem has gotten way out of hand, but they persuaded the king this was so bad that here's what he ought to do. He needed to banish Vashti and have her never come to the palace ever again. Now, technically, they still would be married, but she is no longer going to be the queen and her children would no longer be the heir apparent. She was going to be kicked out of the kingdom and forced to live outside of Xerxes' good graces. Well, he, in his drunken state, thinks that's a great idea. And so he banishes her. But then he gets lonely. a queen. When he sobers up and realizes, what have I done? This was my favorite person, and I kicked her out of the kingdom. Oh, what am I going to do? Some of the other officials, some of the eunuchs said, well, hey, we have a great idea. Let's have a wife contest. What? What is a wife contest? Well, we'll just get all the virgin women in the city. They'll come over here. They'll show you who they are. You'll marry all of them, and then you can pick your favorite to be a replacement for Queen Vashti. He gets to have a whole bunch of women? Sounds like a plan. So that's what they did. They sent out a letter that demanded that all the virgins in Susa would come out and would compete to become the next queen, the wife of King Xerxes. So all the women got gathered up. There was one particular woman. Her name was Hadassah, but nobody called her Hadassah. In fact, she's never referred to as Hadassah for the rest of the book. For the rest of the book, she is called Esther. Now, Hadassah is her Hebrew name. But in order to hide her identity, they named her according to a Persian god, Ishtar. In fact, we get our name Easter from that god. So they called her Esther so that she could appear to be more Persian. So Esther is raised not by her parents. For whatever reason, her parents died. She's raised by her cousin Mordecai. And Mordecai was probably much older than her and raised her up like his own daughter. So she was well taken care of and provided for by her cousin, and she was faithful and obedient to him in all things. Now, when she is taken away in order to perform this wife contest, Mordecai gives her one piece of very valuable advice. Don't tell anyone your Hebrew identity. Keep it a secret. To everyone, you're now Esther, and live as Esther. And so she agrees. And she goes, she's given to the king, or sort of the head of all of Xerxes' eunuchs, and she is raised up for a year in order to go through this beautification process so that she could become or compete to become the next queen of all of Persia. So Esther's taken away and she's put in the custody of that chief servant by the name of Haggai. Now, Haggai liked Esther. In fact, the Bible says specifically that she found favor in his eyes. Not that he looked on her and went, oh, I wish I could have Esther. No. He's a eunuch, which means he's not having a wife at all. He doesn't have the manly parts for it. Okay? He serves the palace and thinks Esther would be the best woman to become queen. So he does more for her than he does for any of the other virgins. What does he do? Well, the first thing that he does is he gives her 7 servants to take care of her every need. So Esther is always looked after 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Could you imagine, ladies, being pampered with 7 women to do your every wish and whim? Be kind of cool, huh? Right? You don't have to lift a finger for food, for cooking, for cleaning, all taken care of. You are pampered. But that doesn't go to Esther's head. Not only is she given all these attendants, she's put into the chief place of Xerxes' harem. So the chief place means that's the first place that he'd normally look. So when he's looking throughout all the women, he's looking right at Esther. And the Bible says she was very, very good looking. She was right? All the guys looked on her and went, wow. So now she's in the chief place. She's a beautiful woman. Naturally, Xerxes is going to probably go for Esther. And the Bible says in chapter 2, verse 10, she never made known her Hebrew name. So she always goes by Esther, and she successfully gets to complete this beautification contest for 12 months. Ladies, a 12-month spa. How does that sound? 12 months, they would go through oil treatments and beautification treatments, and all to make themselves have the smoothest skin, the nicest hair. Everything was to be decked out so that they would get one chance and one chance only to impress the king. What would happen is the king would call you in at night and say, hey, you're going to come in and try out to be my wife. And then if they pleased him, then he might select them to be like a regular wife. But if they didn't please him, then they would just join his concubines, right? So every woman either became the wife or became a concubine. But who was going to be the queen? Well, the head of the eunuchs taught Esther all the right things to do, all the right things to say, all the right ways to behave, so that when it came time to select his queen, Esther was the one that replaced Queen Vashti. So right now in our story, everything seems good. Yeah, there's a little conflict and, not too bad, but that was replaced. And now this Jewish woman, this Jewish girl, is now the queen. That's pretty cool. But the real conflict is just beginning. At the end of chapter 2, there's this interesting story that seems to be a bit of a throwaway, but you got to keep it in the back of your mind all throughout this book. It talks about how Mordecai, who once Esther became queen, he got or tried to get into a place that he could at least be as close as possible to his cousin, right? So he became one of the guards that stood at the gates, or in his case, since he was older, sat at the gates in order to monitor all the comings and goings of people within the palace and within the citadel at Susa. So here's Mordecai at the gate, and there's these two guys by the name of Bigtham and Teresh. And both of those got really mad at King Xerxes for whatever reason, we're not sure. But they were so upset that they decided, you know what? At the right time, we're going to kidnap the king and we're going to kill him. Well, they're talking to each other about this plan, and we don't know if they realize it, but Mordecai is hearing every single word. Maybe they think they're whispering and they're far enough away that Mordecai can't tell. Or maybe they think, oh, he's old, what is he going to do, right? They're thinking they're going to get away with this, and Mordecai's just sitting there, listening away, hearing every word of their plan. And the moment they leave to try to perform the plan, Mordecai sends a quick message to Esther. Esther gets the message that the king's life is in danger. It's now her husband, so she's going to act. She immediately tells the king. He launches an investigation. Sure enough, these two people are caught, tried, and executed. But who is the one who reported it? Mordecai, yet nothing happens to Mordecai. Now that's the way, or that's often where people begin to think God might be not in control, especially when we think we've done really good, we've served him, we've loved him, we're trying to do our best for him, but nothing happens. The Bible says that God blesses those who bless him and rewards those who are faithful to him. If we don't receive that blessing or reward, we begin to wonder, is God really out there? Is he really looking out for our best interests? Well, Mordecai just remains faithful. He stays at his post. He does his job. And it's in the process of doing his job that things begin to get a little dicey. See, there's this guy by the name of Haman. Now, if you are listening to this story in the holiday of Purim, as the Jews read it, every time you say the word Haman, you're supposed to go, boo, because he's the enemy of the Jews. Haman is introduced in the beginning of chapter 3, and often as what happens in our world around us, he is a bad guy and he gets promoted. I've seen it happen in businesses, in schools, even in Christian churches, and where you think would be godly places. Sometimes the worst people are given the best jobs. And even when they fail, it's almost like they're failing upwards. They just get promoted to a different job so that they quit screwing up that job. This is what happened with Haman. Haman keeps getting promoted, and finally, he's so high in the kingdom that Xerxes treats Haman like his right-hand man. Haman is top-notch, head honcho, the big kahuna. He is almost as powerful as the king. And in fact, the king says, as Haman goes in and out of the citadel, everyone needs to bow down and pay respect to Haman. Well, there's a couple things we got to know about Haman. Number one, Haman is an Agite. What is an Agite? An Agite are the descendants of the Amalekites. So Haman is an Amalekite. Who are the Amalekites? They are the people that attacked Israel from behind in the Exodus. Made God so mad that God said, I'm going to wipe those people out. The Amalekites were the ones that God gave the command to Saul. You got to wipe these people out for what they did during the Exodus. And Saul failed. King Saul didn't wipe them out, and they continued to survive even to this day. So there's a lot of kind of blood feuding going on, especially between the Amalekites and the Jews, but more importantly against the Amalekites and the Benjaminites, which it just so happened that that's what Mordecai was, a Benjaminite. The descendant of Saul who tried to wipe out the people of Haman, and to have Haman the Agite promoted to the highest position of the land, and everybody else bowed down to him. That was going too far for Mordecai. Now, Haman might have tried to make everybody treat him like a god, because often people in authority sort of promoted themselves like deity. That might have been the reason why Haman didn't, or why Mordecai didn't bow down. Or it might just have been that Mordecai knew about his lineage and said, no, I'm not bowing down to an Amalekite. Not after what those people did to my people. We don't know the exact reason why Mordecai refused. All we do know is that every time Haman would go into the citadel, everybody would bow down. Oh, Haman, except for Mordecai, who just stayed right where he was. And every time Haman would go out of the citadel, everyone would bow down. Oh, gracious Haman, except for Mordecai. And Haman got so angry with Mordecai. Why is this guy not bowing down to me? Everybody else is bowing down to me except him. And have you ever noticed those people who kind of have what I call the missing tile syndrome? What is a missing tile syndrome? It's where you walk into a room and you can see all the tiles in like a ceiling in an office. But if there's one tile that's missing, that's what bugs them. It's the one thing, the little thing. They have everything else that they could have. It's about one thing. And it's that one thing. It makes them so mad and angry and frustrated and obnoxious. That's Haman, missing tile syndrome. Everybody else is bowing down to him, but he has to have everybody. Has to have Mordecai. Why won't Mordecai bow down? And so he gets really, really frustrated, constantly irritated by the fact that Mordecai isn't doing this, and he finds out who is Mordecai's family. Who is Mordecai from? And that's what set him off. Mordecai, a Benjaminite, a Jew, not bowing down to me. In fact, he got so angry that he decided, you know what? I am not just going to worry about Mordecai. I am going to wipe out his entire family. In his whole people. He wanted to commit genocide, all because one person wouldn't pay him the respect that he thought he deserved. This is our villain. Now, Haman comes up with a beautiful plan. He goes to the king. Well, first he goes to his friends and he says, we need to select the right day for me to be able to approach the king, and the right day to encourage the king to wipe out Mordecai and all of his friends and family. We are going to annihilate the Jews. So what they did is they went home and they grabbed dice. A die is called a pur. And in Hebrew, when you plural something, you add an im to the end. So that's why it's called purim, dice. They grabbed a couple dice and they would roll it to see what month should I talk to the king, and roll it to say what month should I talk to the king about killing all the Jews. And when they rolled the dice, the number 12 came up. It was the month of Adar. So Purim, for the dice that he rolled, pointed to the month of Adar, which is where our holiday of Purim, or the Hebrew holiday of Purim, comes from. Now, when he figured out what date he was going to try to kill all the Jews, what date he needed to approach the king, he went into the king on that date and said, "King, I got to tell you, there's these terrible people that are just messing up your kingdom." And King Xerxes trusted people because kings didn't go out into the populace and in order to see what was going on. So he trusted his advisors to tell him accurate information. There's these terrible people and they're messing everything up. Well, what are they doing? They don't follow your laws. Oh, they don't follow my laws? Well, that's not good. And they have different traditions and rules than everybody else. Oh, that's not good either, because we got to have people getting along. Okay, well, what do you think we should do about them? Since their laws are different and they're not obeying the king's laws, Haman said, let's do this. If it pleases the king, decree that on this certain day they'll all be destroyed. We'll wipe them out. We'll fix it by annihilating the problem. And if you want, I will pay 10,000 talents out of my own pocket in order to cover the tab. It's going to cost money to do this. I will pay for it. Now, the first question you're probably asking yourself is, what's a talent? A talent is what a rich man would make in a year. So think about it. If you're talking about what a rich person made in a year, and then you're multiplying that by 10,000, this guy is like throwing billions of dollars of his own money at the problem. This would be like if Bill Gates walked in and said, you know what, all those churches, they're a problem. I'll tell you what, President Biden, I will pay to burn down every church in the United States out of my own pocket. I'll pay for it all. How much is it going to cost? I don't know. Maybe $10 billion. Fine. Do it. But here's what Xerxes said. You keep your money. I'll pay for it out of the treasury. If this is such a problem, we'll handle it. So Haman got to keep his own money, even though he was filthy, stinking rich, and get what he wants by having a day where he could annihilate all the Jews everywhere in the nation of Persia. Now, a letter gets sent to every province of every country, of every district, and every town all throughout Persia that says, this is what gets to happen. How did that letter get around? Here's what happened. King Xerxes said to Haman, if this is so important, I'll tell you what, I will give you my signet ring. This was a very special ring. So they didn't have signatures. You know how when you write a check or pay a bill or something, you have to sign your name on it? Kings didn't do that. All they did was they took a little bit of wax, they melted the wax onto the paper, and the king would take his ring and press it into the wax, an instant signature. He gave the ring to Haman and said, write any law you want to write, and you use my ring, and it's as if I signed it. Haman got to be the instant legislative branch of the government in Persia. So he wrote his law that then got copied and passed around in every language to every people, to every city, in all the provinces of Persia, that on this day of Adar, the Jews were going to be wiped out, and the king was going to pay for it. And all the possessions of the Jews, so if you got involved in wiping them out, all those possessions would get to be distributed against all the people who committed this bloody act. So if you saw especially a rich Jew in your neighborhood and you got involved in taking him out, all of his property, his land, his possessions got to be distributed against the people who did the crime. This is bad news. This is paid genocide. This is awful. How in the world are the Jews going to be able to respond to this? God, are you even in control when you're seeing that God's people are specifically targeted for execution, for annihilation? As word got around to every city, every town, every province in all the nation of Persia, of course, the word got out to the capital. And Mordecai reads the announcement that all the Jews are going to be targeted for annihilation. And Mordecai wails. He puts on sackcloth and ashes. Now, what does that involve? It involves that Mordecai took what we now refer to as a burlap sack. Do you ever see those sacks that they put big potatoes in? right? We'd often use them as those potato sack races. That's burlap, very scratchy material. He cut holes into the corners, he cut a hole into the top, and he wore it like a loincloth. And then he shaved his head, cut his head bald, took ashes, that is usually burned cow poo, and put it on his head and walked around the city like that, crying and wailing over this law. Now it got even worse. Because if you were mourning in sackcloth and ashes, that was okay, as long as you did it outside the citadel. If you went inside the citadel into where the king was, and the king saw you mourning, he would assume that you were mourning because of his reign. And he'd execute you. Nobody should be unhappy in front of the king. No one. Mordecai, as long as he's outside the citadel, he's fine, he can mourn. But the moment he comes into the citadel and does his job, and he is in sackcloth and ashes, everybody's going to talk about it. There's some guy in the citadel, sackcloth and ashes. This guy's going to die. He's dead man walking. What a foolish man. Now, because everybody's talking about it, it gets word all the way up to Esther. There's a guy, and she figures it out. It's Mordecai. Mordecai's wandering around in sackcloth and ashes in the citadel. Doesn't want him to die. So she tells her servant, go down there and give him clothes. Get him properly dressed, at least. And then that way, he's not going to be like a megaphone saying how sad he is in case a king walks by. So the servant faithfully does what Esther says. She runs down. She says to Mordecai, Mordecai, put on these clothes. You can't wander around in sackcloth and ashes in the citadel. You could get killed. Put them on. And he goes, no. I'm not wearing them. He's like, but the queen says put them on. No. Why not? And he hands him the bill. He hands him the law. Because this is going to happen to us. Because we're all going to die. And we need to mourn. Because we are in trouble. Well, the servant goes back up to Queen Esther and says, Mordecai's not putting on the clothes. He gave me this letter, and this letter's talking about exactly what's going to happen, this decree of what Haman is going to do. He refuses to wear any clothes because this law is going to mean the death of all of our people. When he says this to her, he also gives, or when Mordecai said to the servant, go talk to Queen Esther, he told Hathach, her servant, you need to urge her. You need to tell her she's got to go before the king. She's got to plead the case of the Jews. And maybe there's something the king can do in order to stop this annihilation. One big problem. Hathach goes to Esther and says, this is the law. This is what Mordecai says. He says, you got to go in front of the king. And she goes, oh, no. Why not? She says, you better go back to Mordecai. And you better tell him this. If anyone goes in front of the king and they're not called, so the king doesn't say, bring me my wife Esther, and I just show up, if he does not lift up his golden scepter that's in his hand, extend it out to me as an act of mercy, that instantly means that those guards who are guarding the king, kill me. I'm going to die. And here's the problem. She goes, I don't dare go see the king because he hasn't summoned me. He hasn't called for me in 30 days. Okay, ladies, I want to ask you, if your husband hasn't talked to you for a month, how do you think the marriage is going? Yeah, they haven't talked in a month. She's thinking, oh my gosh, he's probably mad at me. I probably screwed up. I said something he didn't like. And I go waltzing in and be like, hi, hubby. No, I don't want to do that. You better go down there and you better tell him we need another plan. I can't go before the king. But Mordecai says to her some of the most important things in the entire book. And if you don't understand his response to Esther here, then you miss the entire message of the book. First, he says something really cold, verse 13. He says, do you think that in the king's palace you're going to escape? This is a harsh reality that we have to realize. Mordecai is not saying, I will rat you out. I will tell them who you are and they will come and kill you too. That's not what he's saying. What he's saying is people know you're a Jew. They'll be able to figure it out. And the moment some Jew who knows who you are thinks I can maybe extend my life just a little bit longer if I rat you out, they'll do it. In this rat race, people will throw one another under the bus just to survive for a few hours more. You'll be discovered and you'll be executed. That's a harsh reality. When everything goes south and everyone starts to have problems, trust me, people start turning on each other. Even Jesus talks about it where father will be against son and mother against daughter, brothers against their own siblings and against their own parents, all to be able to survive when real tribulation happens. Trust me, we people are evil. And we can very easily turn on each other in evil ways if we think it's going to help us more. Which is why our only answer, the best answer, is to trust that God indeed is in control. And Mordecai shows her this with what he says in verse 14. Relief and deliverance will rise for the Jews. That is critical. Relief and deliverance will rise for the Jews. Even though this book never ever even says the name of God, that's where God is. Mordecai knows God has promised that he will bless those who bless the Jews. He will curse those who curse the Jews. And through the Jews, all the families of the world will be blessed. That Abrahamic covenant has been throughout all of time. So he knew and had faith. It's going to come from someone. We will be delivered from this. But, and here is the answer for all of us. And who knows whether you have not come to the kingdom for such a time as this. Church, you have come to this place for such a time as now. You did not come to this church by accident. You did not listen to this message by accident. None of the events of your life have been an accident. You are born for such a time as this, and God wants to use you for his plan. Trust me, his plan will happen either with you or without you. I can either be part of God's plan of deliverance or I can be part of the problem, but I'm going to be part of something. So church, the question always falls upon us to decide, are we going to let God use us, or are we going to let God accomplish his purposes without us? My choice is always the former. I want God to use me, and I pray that he uses me to accomplish his purposes in your life and in this time that we live in right now. Esther was in this place for such a time as this, and she had a choice. Will she let God use her, or will she let God accomplish his purposes without her? What was her decision? We got to pray. So she went and said, all right, hold a fast. Hold a fast for 3 days. And at the end of 3 days, I'll go in front of the king. And if I perish, I perish. She talks about a fast. Now, a fast in the Jewish life always means fasting and praying. What do they do during a fast? A fast means they wouldn't eat. Now, the average Jew would have 2 meals. They'd have a lunch and they'd have a dinner. They most of the time did not have breakfast, right? They'd have a lunch and they'd have a dinner. Their lunch was usually a little bit earlier, and their dinner was usually a little bit earlier than we often have dinner. But they'd have 2 big meals throughout the day. Instead of having those 2 big meals, when their stomachs would start going, they would know that's the time to pray. And later on in the afternoon, when their stomachs would go a little bit more, that was the time to pray again. Every time they felt hungry, that was a time to pray for what was about to happen. So every Jew throughout all the kingdom did not eat, did not drink for 3 days as Esther got ready in order to see the king. Now, I want you to know this is a horrible strategy on Esther's part. Why? Back then, it was viewed that women should always be a little more curvy. Okay? The whole stick figure anorexic model from Vogue today was not the standard of beauty throughout most of time. During this time, men wanted women to have a little meat on their bones. They wanted them to have a little fat. They wanted them to be a little plump. Because if a woman was plump, it meant she was healthy. She ate well. So when you starved yourself for 3 days, well, now you're more skin and bone. You're not looking so hot. Right? And she's going to want to stand before her king as attractive as possible so that he will be as gracious as possible. But she chooses to fast and not drink for 3 days. Now, how many of you have ever done something like that? How many of you have ever not eaten for more than a day? How many of you have ever not eaten and not drunk any water for more than a day? Yeah, I've never done that. I fasted, yeah. I fasted for more than a day, not a problem. But not drinking either? Oh, I'd start to get headaches. It'd be really bad, especially with my caffeine addiction. Oh, not good at all. So she's putting herself in the worst possible condition in order to go in front of the king, hungry and thirsty, and say, can you help me? Not wise. But often the foolishness of God seems wise to men. But the wisdom of the Lord seems to be foolish among men. And here Esther was doing what was foolishness to man, but what God ended up favoring. She, Mordecai, and everybody else did exactly what Esther wanted. 3 days, 3 nights, no food, no water, no juice, no nothing. And every time they desired anything, that was their cue. We better go to the Lord in prayer. And they prayed and prayed and prayed until the day came where Esther was going to stand in front of the king. And she went in order to present herself to the king. She snuck in through one of the side doors, walked right up to the king and just prayed, Lord, please don't have him kill me. And when the king saw Esther, he smiled and extended his wand. Oh, thank God. Now, this puts her in a little bit of an interesting position. Now, he extends his golden scepter, and she did what said to everybody, I accept his grace. She walked over and touched that golden scepter to say, thank you, king, for not killing me. Okay? So he extended the scepter. She touches it. She feels a little bit safe. He is wondering, why in the world did my wife risk her life to come and see me? Because he didn't summon her. And he knew the traditions. He knew if he was mad at her, all he had to do was go. She was gone. Okay? That was more than a divorce. That was till death do you part. Now, he then says to her, in order to try to say, hey, I'm not mad at you. I really do love you. What is it that you want? He says, what is it, Queen Esther? What is your request? It shall be given to you even to half of my kingdom. Oh, that's a nice husband. Right? Have you ever had, ladies, your husbands come to you and say, I love you so much. Half of everything that I own, I'll give to you if it's going to make you happy. I'll do anything that you want me to do. How about the dishes? No, that's too much. Right? Xerxes was saying, anything you want, it's yours. Even if it's a half my kingdom, I will grant that request. Name it. Name it. It's done. Now, she could then, right here, right now, say to him, I don't want to die. She could say that. But somehow she balks. She doesn't give the king a request. Now, sometimes when people do this movie, they sort of treat it as Esther was mad at herself, that she failed somehow. I don't think so. I think God was slowly prompting her to say, we need a little bit of tension here. We need to build up some curiosity as to what is the reason that you have come. So she comes up with, I think, a brilliant idea. She says, here's my request. I would like the king and Haman to join me for a feast that I have prepared. Now, she's really hungry, so she's going to eat well tonight. But she wants the king and Haman to come. Now, men, how many of you are smart enough to realize that is not what she really is there for? Right? Men often, like my wife, I instantly know whenever she's upset about something, and usually it has something to do with me, my wife will do something like this. It does not even have to be in the middle of a conversation to me. I could be in a room, she could walk in, maybe even start doing the dishes, and whenever she goes, I know there's a problem. And 90% of the time, that problem is me. I've done something. Okay? I know that. Xerxes knew it. No woman is going to risk her wife to say, I really want to have dinner with you. It's not happening. So he's now really curious as to what Esther is doing here. What does she want? But he set it up to half my kingdom, it's yours. Her request is, we're going to have a dinner party. We're having a dinner party. So he says to the guards, bring Haman. We're going to eat at Esther's. But they get into Esther's room and they begin to have this party. And they're talking and probably a little chit chat and discussion about the kingdom. But he knows something's up with my wife. Most good husbands don't want their beloved to be upset. They don't want them to be angry. They want them to feel happy. In fact, the number one thing that men often want in their homes is peace. We'll solve every problem we possibly can to just have peace. And his wife is upset, which means he is upset. He wants to know what's making my wife upset. And so he says again, as Haman and them are enjoying this party together, he says, what is your wish? What is it that you want? I'll give it to you. Anything, everything. Just name it and claim it. What do you want? It's yours. Even to half of my kingdom, it shall be fulfilled. What does she do? She makes it even more interesting. Well, how is it even more interesting than this? She says, well, what I really want is for you and Haman to join me tomorrow. That's not peaceful. My wife is upset. She won't tell me why. How in the world am I going to solve this problem? How in the world am I going to get to peace? But she tells him, she says, if you come, I will tell you what I really want tomorrow. Women, if you ever want to wrap your men around your finger, just have a little bit of suspense like that and we are putty. By the next day, we have tortured ourselves to wonder, what did I do wrong? Why are you not happy with me? How can I make it right? I'll tell you later. No. Oh, he was a wreck. My wife is not telling me the problem. I really want to solve the problem. And Haman is just sitting there and like, yeah, man, I just got invited to a banquet by the queen. This is awesome. So as Xerxes is torturing himself for why won't my wife talk to me? Haman's going home like, yeah, I'm the man. And he begins to walk out to the citadel to go home and watching all the people bow down to him. Yeah, I'm like a god. And then he sees Mordecai. Oh, I'm going to get him. And he walks home. And he is bragging to all of his friends and family. He is bragging about all of his promotions. He's bragging about all of his kids. He's bragging about everything that possibly could go right. And he even says in 5:12, hey, I am so cool. Even the queen invites this guy for dinner. Yeah. Don't you wish you had some of my mojo? Don't you wish you had my juice? Don't you wish you were like me? Right? And so his friends, his family are like, oh, Haman, you are such the man. Oh, Haman, you are wonderful. Yeah, everybody loves you. And he's like, well, that stupid Mordecai. I want to get him. I want to get him now. And they're like, with such a great trajectory, why wait? Why don't you build a gallows? His friends actually encourage him as he's complaining about Mordecai. Why don't you build a huge gallows and put Mordecai on it super high so the whole citadel can see that this is what happens if you mess with Haman. Now, I do have to tell you, I couldn't find a good picture of a Persian gallows. That's the best that I could find. That is not right. A Persian gallows is not a noose. People weren't executed by being hung on a gallows like that until the 1800s, first done by the British. So what then is a Persian gallows? They would take a tree, they would chop it down, they would take off all the branches, and they would make that top of the tree into a nice, hard spike. And then they would impale it onto a person and lift them up so that as this spike went through their... Oh, no. It would slowly go through their entire system, and they would bleed out and hang there so that everybody could see this painful, slow death. You have a question?
Yes.
What's your question, Ethan? A very, very similar way, yes. Yeah, he wasn't Dracula. He was one of the men that created the myth of Dracula. Ethan is talking about Vlad the Impaler, where one of the things he would do is when he would win a battle, he would take all the enemy opponents and he would lift them up on spears. And then he would put them in the ground, paving his road to victory. Okay, no more. All right, let's keep going. So what a gallows is just this gigantic spike that they would then Mordecai on it, lift him up, shove it into the ground, and everyone could see, yeah, I don't want to mess with Haman. Yeah, I don't want that kind of death. So that night, as Haman is like, yeah, I'm going to build that gallows 50 cubits high. How high is 50 cubits? 75 feet. A 75-foot spike. Where everybody in the city could see Mordecai slowly dying on that spike and hear the cries of his wailing and his moans as he would die. Oh, he thought that was a beautiful idea. That would show everybody, don't mess with Haman. When he decides to send some of his friends and family in order to make that spike, Haman goes, you know what? Why wait? I'm going to go to the king tonight, and I'm going to get that Mordecai. Now, the king is torturing himself. He's torturing himself because he wants to make his wife happy, and he can't make his wife happy because his wife won't tell him what's wrong with her. So he's probably pacing the floor, and he tries to lay down. I've had these nights where you can't sleep, you try to lay down there, and you just turn, and you toss, and try to walk a little bit, get a little energy out. Why won't my wife talk to me? What did I do? I know it wasn't dinner because I had dinner with her, and I said, well, we were fine. Did I say something? Do we miss our anniversary? What is it? And as he's pacing the floor back and forth, oh, what did I do? What's wrong? He's like, I got to sleep. I'm so tired. I got to sleep. So he summons in one of his servants to read the Chronicles. Now, we have some of the Chronicles in our Bible. They're not the Persian Chronicles. They're the Chronicles of some of the kings of Judah. Chronicles are boring. They're boring to read. In the middle of First Chronicles, it's like, and so-and-so was the father of so-and-so, was the father of so-and-so, was the father of... You read those books to sometimes pass out. He thought, I need some chronicles to pass out. So they would read. Today you ate breakfast at this time, and you signed these many laws, and blah, 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 blah. So he summoned someone to read the Chronicles, and he's sitting there on his throne. He's like, why won't my wife talk to me? What is wrong with her? I know there's something wrong with her. She wouldn't risk her life for nothing. Why does she risk her life? This is serious. This is really big. This is a problem. And so as he's biting his nails and really worried about what is going on with Esther, the Chronicle's like, and you ate this many eggs for breakfast, and you went for a walk, and you had your poo at 9:15, and they're just doing everything, reading it. And then he got to this point in the Chronicles where he goes, and on this day there is a report that Bigthana and Teresh tried to assassinate you. And the king goes, wait, what? Oh, yeah. I remember that. Yeah, Esther warned me about an assassin. Who told Esther? Mordecai. Mordecai? Who's Mordecai? I don't remember Mordecai. Did we ever do anything for Mordecai? No, I didn't see anything. And we write down everything. He's like, well, that's still good. Someone saves my life and I don't pay him back. We got to do something for Mordecai. What should we do for Mordecai? Hey, he says to the person reading to him, who's in the court? Who can I talk to? Now, at that time, Haman was coming into the court in order to talk to the king about killing Mordecai. So he looks outside the window and goes, oh, Haman's here. He says, great. Haman's standing outside. Get him in here. I want to talk to him. So as Haman's like walking in order to sort of wonder, okay, what do I tell the king? How do I say this? What am I going to do? All of a sudden the door is open and one of the servants comes out and says, Haman, the king wants to see you. And he's like, oh, I'm glad I'm here then. Yeah, all right. So he walks in order to see the king. And as he's standing before the king, the king says to him, Haman, I really want to honor someone. Did something really important for me. I don't know what to do. I'm not good at this. How do you show someone that you really want to honor them? And Haman, being just summoned in order to see the king by name, says to himself, oh, you royal, you sly dog, you want to honor me. Yeah, that's why you summoned me in here. You just don't want to say it. I know. I got you. All right. What do I want? I know. It says, I want you to take the royal robes that you have worn. So they have the king's smell in them. Right? I want you to take your clothes. And then I want you to take a horse that you've ridden, something that belongs to you, and put those clothes on the person you want to honor. Put him on the robe put him on the horse that you've ridden, and take one of your most trusted servants and parade them around the citadel and around the city and declare, this shall it be done to the man whom the king delights to honor. Up and down the city, they're going to shout that phrase. This is what is done to the man whom the king delights to honor. That's what you do. I got you. And the king's like, Haman, that is fantastic. That is awesome. Great idea. Go and do all of that to Mordecai. And don't miss a word that you said. That was perfect. And he's like, but I wanted to kill him. Fine. So Haman has to spend the whole rest of the day taking Mordecai with all the king's clothes and parading him up and down the city. This is the guy that the king wants to honor. This is what is done to the people that the king wants to honor. Stupid Mordecai. He is mad. And after he spends all day going up and down the city honoring Mordecai, he goes home And one of his advisors says this to him, and this is also very important. This is in 6:13. If Mordecai, he says, the guy that you wanted to kill, if he's one of the Jews, you're going to die before him. You don't mess with God's people. You don't mess with God's rules. If you decide that you think you have a better way, I'm going to tell you, it will not be for your good. It will only be for your peril. Haman tried to mess with God and with his people. And sure enough, their prediction becomes true. How? Well, immediately after they're talking, the eunuchs from the palace to have that second dinner with Esther and King Xerxes comes and say, Haman, we got to go. So the last word he hears from his friends and family were, you're going to die sooner. That's a lot. And they usher him over to the palace. He goes to the palace, and there he has dinner with the king and queen. He has had just a horrible day. He is probably not very good company. Mordecai, honor him, and I hate this. And the king is worried about Esther. This whole time, that's all he's been thinking about. Sure, he had an idea for Mordecai, but Haman took care of that. What is wrong with my wife? So he says again, what is your wish, Queen Esther? What is it that you want? It's going to be granted to you. Just what is your request? And if you name your request, even up to half my kingdom, it shall be fulfilled. So tell me, what is it? I know you didn't risk your life for a dinner party. I know you didn't risk your life for 2 dinner parties. I just want to know what's wrong, and I want to fix it, please. Tell me what's wrong. And as he said those words, she pleads with him. Let my life be granted to me. My wish is that you save me and my people. And he's like, wait, what? Who's trying to kill my wife? He is mad. He is hopping mad. And she's begging, save me. And he's like, from whom? Name the man. Who's doing this to you? And I could just imagine Haman sitting there drinking. This is drama. This is like more than a Korean drama. He's maybe has a little bit of wine in his hand, and he's just taking a sip in order to watch this drama play out. Save him. Who's trying to kill him? And just as this is my imagination, not what's in the Bible, but this is what I think. That just as he is taking this sip of wine and watching this drama play out, and he's like, who is it? She says, it's the enemy, wicked Haman. And he goes, me? Oh, Xerxes is hopping mad. He jumps up angry. He can't even look at Haman. He goes out into the garden. He's probably kicking over pots and pans. What is it? Did it kill my wife? I can't. And he's furious. He is so angry. He can't even think straight. He's just mad. And Haman knows he's dead man walking. He is so worried. He's going to die that night that he throws himself at Esther and he says, please, just do something to spare me. He's clawing at her, begging for her to do something to recant, to change. He's not trying to take his life. Please, I didn't mean anything. I'm sorry. I don't know what you're thinking. I don't want to hurt you. Just please tell your husband he's going to kill me. So while he is busy throwing himself at Esther, Xerxes walks back into the room and he says, you are trying to molest my wife in front of me. What am I going to do with you? And the servants say, well, there's a 50-cubit gallows just built outside. You could take him and hang him on it. Great idea. And so they took Haman, and on the trap that he had built for Mordecai, he had himself die upon. The traps that we build for others will be the very traps where we'll ensnare ourselves. So Haman died. He was impaled, put up into the sky, And all the world could see, you don't mess with Mordecai. The king took that signet ring. Do you remember that signature? Took that signet ring off of Haman's hand, and he put it on Mordecai's hand and said, you are now my chief legislator. Any law you want, you can have. And he gave everything that belonged to Haman to Esther. And Esther took all that belonged to Haman and gave it to Mordecai and said, you run Mordecai's house. So now everything that was once part of the enemy, all of his wealth, all of his treasure, all of his riches, was now given to the very people he wanted to harm. His plans went for nothing, and God's purposes was protected. The rest of the book, from chapters 9 and chapters 10 and the rest of 8, was all discussing how they solved the problem. Now, in the laws of the Medes and Persians, as we found out in Daniel 6, you can't change it. But you can write another law to go parallel to it. The law that Mordecai decided to make was, okay, people can come and try to kill the Jews, but the Jews have a right to defend themselves. They can gather in fortifications the day before the attack, and they can protect their lives and their families together. And sure enough, when the sons of Haman and others who were wicked did try to come against the Jews and attack, God was with them in battle. And as the Jews defended themselves, everyone who tried to fall or tried to kill the Jews fell themselves. And Haman's sons were hanged just like Haman. All of this is to say one very important truth. The truth of this book is this: how did God save his people? It surely was God, because only God could take all of those different pieces and move it so perfectly. How did he save his people? He chose Esther, who was the right person, and he put her in the right place at the right time, and Esther did the right thing. How then does God continue to save his people? And that is your question. Are you the right person? Absolutely. If you say to God, choose me, here I am, send me. Whether it's to Germany or northern Thailand or to Kyrgyzstan or to a Mexico mission trip or to even the few children or the number of children that we saved here in the Southern California area through CYIA. You can be that right person who God will put in the right place at just the right time. And when you do the right thing, you will see the salvation of the Lord. God wants to use each and every one of you. The question is only this: are you willing to be used by him? And if you are, you will see that God is really in control. Let us pray. Lord, as we study this entire book, what a book it was in order to see your power, even though your name is not even mentioned. Lord, may we then take it to heart that you, Lord, are in control of all things. You move all pieces around in order to do your will, and you can do your will with or without us. We are not needed. But Lord, that's what makes this so special. It makes it so special because we can choose to have you use us. And when we do, we're going to see your control do many mighty things through us. So God, I pray that everyone here in the sanctuary can say, Lord, here I am, use me. May that be the cry of our heart. And may we all see how mighty your hand is and how much you really are in total control. We love you, Lord. We praise you for being Almighty God. In Jesus' name, amen.